Sturgis, and so she's excited not to have to commute except for this therapeutic thing. But I don't know, it kind of sounds like some of that stuff is at home or whatever, like build out the thing. So I don't know. Yeah. I told her to look into Oyate too because I've heard good things about that, and they're trying to build out all their programs up there too.
Who?
Oyate. The old, like, Susan.
Oh, yeah.
But, I don't know, maybe she will, but she really likes the idea of not having a commute. That drive has just become so much. Was Megan gonna be here today?
No, she was not able to make it.
So, who else?
Okay, we're live.
Anybody?
Good evening. We'll call to order the Sturgis Parks and Forestry Board meeting. It's Tuesday, August 29th, 2023.
Was Megan gonna be here today?
Oh, no. Is it like her? Oh, here.
Okay, first order of business, we'd like to welcome our two new board members, Karen Linus and Jeannie Blair. So welcome to the Park and Forestry Board, and thank you for your service and willingness to be a part of our board. I would just remind everybody that if you do have comments or wish to speak, just please make sure you use the microphone so that they can hear it on the online version. Other than that, again, welcome. Next up is the consider of the consent calendar, which is the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second.
Thanks. That was moved by Sean. Thank you, Shauna. And seconded by Lynn. Consider approval of the minutes from the May 16th meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review them? Any questions or corrections?
Nope.
No?
No.
Okay. So we'd look for a motion on those.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes from May 16th meeting.
I second that motion.
So moved by Shauna, seconded by Allison. Park Superintendent Cody was not able to make it tonight at the last minute, so I will try and fill in for him. Just some project updates. We continue to be busy. This year, especially mowing with all the rain that we have gotten, it's still amazing to see how green things are for it to be the end of August or the 1st of September. So that has taken a lot of time. Also, we've been getting ready, removing some brush and things from the 6th Street park site where we're anticipating the batting cage going. They've done quite a bit of concrete work. We had 4 or 5 panels that were right adjacent to the main city park and the football field that had been pushed up by a tree. So we were able to cut that tree down and pull those panels out and replace them. And that was a huge improvement that was made. We've also, of course, the 7th Street Bridge has been finalized, and that connector to connect that bike path back up has been done, restored. We still do have the asphalt trail that we put in. I think we'll continue to keep that connectivity from 7th Street over to 9th Street. But certainly welcome that bridge being back in, has been a good thing. The trolley swing, we did get that last week. It's been delivered, and we are scheduled to start that project on the 6th of September. So next Tuesday, we're going to be working with Todd Meintz, is going to be doing the concrete on the part of the path that goes around. If you remember, what that looked like. We had a path that went all the way around it, and then that trolley swing sat in the center of it, and then so he'll start working on that next week. Excited to have that done, and that matches, the colors are all matched the existing playground equipment down there, so kind of excited to see that one happen. I would guess that will probably take us, maybe 3 weeks to get everything completely installed and.
I can't remember, did that have one track or two tracks?
That's got 2 tracks.
Are we doing 2, remember on Facebook, I showed that one down in Rapid, they have the disc. They have the disc bottom, and then we had our ADA swing. I was just curious, what 2 ones did we do, or do you remember?
Put me on the spot. It's two swings. One was the ADA, and that very well could be the other one. I don't recall off the top of my head. I know we got two slides on it, or whatever you want to call them. Two beams.
Two
yeah.
runways? I don't know.
We've got the double. I know we do
Yeah.
got that.
Huh.
I'll let you know. I don't recall off the top of my head which one
I can't
we
remember.
chose. Community garden upgrades. We had a request from the community garden to build a shade shelter in I guess I'll call it the City Park community garden, the one that's down kind of behind Tom's Tees. So that's one of our fall projects we're going to be doing, is building a shelter. It's going to end up being really similar or almost identical to the one that we built at the Mead Avenue Park. So that should be good. And then we'll have a concrete pad underneath of it where they can have a picnic table and you can sit and be out of the sun. For whatever reason, they thought that they had a need for that, so we can do that project. The other day, last Friday, we actually had a accident where somebody ran through the community garden on Ballpark. Luckily, nobody was hurt. It did destroy 3 of the gardens and took down the fence.
Holy smokes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
What was left of the vehicle, too?
Yeah, so we're working through that. We were able to get a fence contractor, to get that straightened up and to get a temporary fence up. And next week, he's going to be installing the permanent fence. And then the parks crews will actually go down and because we made those raised beds, we'll repair those, get the wood and repair those, and get everything submitted to the individual's insurance company, and get that all taken up. But hadn't really planned on that, but we'll get that up. Luckily, I guess, or if there's any luck, it's the end of the growing season.
Harvest time now.
Harvest time, right.
Whoever ran into it, does their
I
insurance
don't
pay
think
for
we
it?
should probably say.
Well, no,
it.
no,
I
I'm
mean,
saying, but it doesn't come out of the city budget, does it?
No, they had insurance. No different than a regular, any other vehicle accident if they ran into the side of the building or whatever. So if they would not have, then we would have to go towards some kind of looking at restitution, or ultimately our insurance carrier would have to cover it. So we were fortunate in that fact that we can get everything tidied back up and shouldn't really cause too much trouble. Park trees, one of the things that we wanted to mention on the park trees, of course, we cut the one down that was lifting up the bike path by the football field that we just talked about. We had another one that was just to the northwest of the stone shelter that had completely cracked in half. So we took that tree down. Unfortunately, we had to remove the whole tree because it was rotten. We do have a individual family from Sturgis that is wanting to put in a new memorial tree, so likely we'll put it in that same spot and replace it with a new one. So that's a good thing. Also, during the rally, we had one day over by the Woodland Shelter, which is the one the furthest to the west. We had one of those windstorms, and it blew a tree over as well. Just about all of these trees were elm trees, and they're rotten inside. So I would suspect that we'll continue to see some of that since we have a number of elm trees down in the park, but just something to be aware of, and we're constantly kind of watching them, and we try and trim out the dead parts when we see them, and try and make a decision on whether or not we need to take more of it down. But just something to give you guys an update, and that's about as much as I have to fill in for Cody. Any questions?
I'm just curious, like in the city park area, you know, where we had a couple of those great big trees right on the play area. Do you remember the one, there's now a bench kind of near where it was. Is there any plans to maybe plant another tree like in that vicinity?
So
Just
we
seems
do,
so
we
hot.
plant trees every year. Not that, and I think we're 35 years of Tree City USA.
Well, I just meant right there in that location.
Sometimes no. I mean, we have to look at if we can grow a tree there, and quite honestly, some of the trees that are in the park are too closely spaced together, and that's what happened. They compete for water, for sun, so we look at trying to maintain, you know, that healthy environment where we can keep them spaced properly. And then the other thing, which we are doing, you know, back decades ago, we planted all one variety, and so when we do get disease of a particular kind for a species, it can be very detrimental. So now we're trying to plant multiple species in the same parks, so that if we do have something like that, it doesn't kill all the trees. I mean, you know, and that's kind of goes back to some of the emerald ash borer.
Yeah, that city park area though, like where it's so hot now on the play equipment compared to when we had those great big trees. And I know the shade structures are expensive and whatnot, but at some time I think it'd be great if we could try to find some sort of shade, something in the budget, because it's so hot down there now. But
Okay. Any other questions on the projects?
Yep, one quick question. It was for Cody. I don't know if he's ever mentioned it, but I had pickleball players ask me if he had mentioned at one time that building that's by the tennis courts, is that where the batting cage is gonna be?
The blue park building that's right next to the
Next to-
Kiwanis, yeah.
Yeah. That he had said that they could possibly share that and have a pickleball court in there. Has he ever mentioned it?
Nope, that's the first I've heard of that. I'm not sure that it would lend itself. I mean, once they have the batting cages up, I'm not sure how you would play pickleball in there. I mean,
I don't know.
once the batting cages go up, they're gonna stay up. They're
Yeah.
not something that you would tear down, put up, tear down, put up. I mean,
Yeah.
am I right, the batting cages are not going to be open to the public, right?
I don't know that we've gotten that far. They're gonna be managed through, or what we had anticipated they would be managed through the community center, and I would guess, depending on what your definition of public would be, I mean, so the first come is, you know, and we have to try and manage, you know, Little League, baseball, softball, you know, I would certainly think that those organizations would, you know, they're gonna have to do some sort of a draft on what times, but if it's not being used, I don't know that we wouldn't allow somebody else to use it.
That's what I was just wondering, because when I read it, it just sounded to me like basically the baseball organizations would be in charge of it and would have the keys to it and whatnot. So I was
No.
just curious how that was
Yeah,
going,
no,
since it is a public
To
structure.
my knowledge, everything that's been discussed thus far, and all of those organizations had agreed to having it being ran through the community center,
Gotcha.
and, you know, so again, so there wasn't, well, you know, softball's controlling it or baseball's
Right.
control, we don't ever get to practice. And so that was the compromise, was to have it scheduled through, no different than, you know, they do the different rec leagues of basketball and flag football and different things like that. So I have not, like I said, that was the original plan, not to say that it can't change or won't change, but I don't think that like me as the public would go down there and pay $5 to use the batting cage. I don't think it's,
Yeah, I just kind of thought
designed
that
that
was
way.
kind of unfortunate, because like, for instance, like my child, I thought about putting in baseball. Since we didn't have any indoor complex for us to practice to see if she even liked it or whatnot. And so then I thought, well, maybe if they have this indoor, batting cage, we could maybe try it out or whatever, but then it looks like it's not gonna be
I
open.
think that would be open, like I said, if it were during a time period where it was not being used by one of the organized sports,
Yeah.
then I don't see, it'd be no different than you going down and using the basketball court. If there's basketball games, yeah, you can't,
Okay.
but there's open time too.
Yeah, good. Glad to hear that there'll be some open time.
Anything else? Thanks. All right, we'll go into my part. So right now, we're currently, throughout the city, we're working on the 2024 budget. Just wanted to get this in front of you guys, in case you had any questions on any of it. We're looking at doing first reading on Tuesday night. From there, it'll go to second reading, and then 30 days after second reading, it will become the budget. We usually work together with the city manager to develop that. For the most part, before Daniel left, he had a lot of this done, so as a management team, we finished this up with all the different departments, and with Faye, the finance officer, and are presenting it to the city council. I don't really have any, I think that this is a very workable budget. You will see that the bottom dollars from 2023 to 2022, we did actually decrease, but some of that was due to that money for the ADA, those particular projects. That money for that swing was put into the 2023 budget and is now, of course, taken out. It wouldn't be carried over into a next year cycle. That's why there's the deficit there. But overall, we have a workable budget that we feel we can continue to maintain our parks and recreational facilities at the same manner that we have the last several years. Does anybody have any particular questions when it comes to budget or any of the line items or?
Just from quick looking, I don't see anything, but how do you plan for, like the ADA swing that was put in? Like each year, do we budget a certain amount for?
So there is it's not contained in the parks budget itself, because the parks budget is more of an operational. And so a lot of times when we have those one-off projects, they come out of the capital improvement budget, and that's actually where that money for the ADA improvements came from, and then it was transferred into this budget, and we were able to put that project together. But generally, any of the big one-time projects are going to come out of a capital improvement budget versus the normal day-to-day operating budget. Any other questions on the parks budget?
Okay, that's just parks.
That's parks, so the next one will be the cemetery.
Okay.
Those are the two that we're looking at tonight, I guess, if you have any. It's not the total city budget, of course. Going once, twice,
Sold.
old.
Okay. It's crazy how your fuel for the park swings so much. The cost of operating your equipment.
The
just
fuel budget?
fuel
Yeah.
From year to year.
Fuel is, and we try to forecast that, but that's one that generally we kind of look at. So, when I put together the budgets, I have about try and look at like a 3-year trend, and we kind of look at the ups and the downs, and we kind of know we don't want to be necessarily on the high end or on the low end. We try and forecast it kind of in the middle. And then if for whatever reason, you know, where we have those years where fuel prices do go crazy, we would either cut something else out of the budget to make up for that, or we'd have to do a supplement towards the end of the year to justify that. And that would be generally across the board. And I mean, you know, parks and cemetery probably have a very small fuel budget compared to as like sanitation or streets, or where it's a much greater
Which-
number.
On your mowers, your big, you know, industrial mowers, what's your turnaround time as far as when you replace them?
So all of our equipment comes out of equipment replacement, and our mowers are on a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years we're getting rid of one and replacing it with a new one.
Is that open bid for different companies that can,
We do. Sometimes we'll go out to open bid. Other times we'll use a cooperative purchasing agreement like Sourcewell or the NJPA, where it's already, or the state bid where it's already been bid, and we have the ability to buy off of that same contract. Then we don't necessarily put it out to public bid, but we would buy off of those already bid agreements. So we've done it both ways. Actually, we've seen you know, it seems like we've been getting a better deal. For a long time, we bought John Deere mowers, and nothing against their great mowers, but they're very expensive mowers compared to some of the other brands as well. So, you know, we're constantly looking at trying to get the best bang for the buck, whether it's a mower or whether it's a piece of equipment. You know, and then the other thing we always try and look at too is having a fleet of, like, we don't want to have 8 mowers and have them all individual, because then we have different, you know, we have different oil filters and air filters and blades. And so, you know, sometimes we may want to pay a little bit more so that we can keep it that we run everything, has the exact same blade, the same oil filter, runs the same oil, the same, you know, just about most of our big commercial mowers are diesel. They're not a gas engine, they're diesel. So, you know, we factor all that into trying to make a good decision on our equipment.
about 3 years is your turnaround? Okay.
They get used hard.
Oh, I
mean,
know.
they're every day. So, here's the cemetery budget again. You can see this one. Well, let me get you. I'm still on the other one. Sorry. There's our cemetery budget.
So all these budgets were the anticipated costs. This is not the final cost, like.
I
They just
gue-
list
guess
everything
explain.
ending.
I don't understand your
Well, I'm
question,
just cu-
Allison.
I was just curious, you know, I'm just looking at, like, your budget is 2021, like, everything's ended in a zero, like, just find that.
So
this is just the
this is the
proposed.
budget. This isn't the final, what the final expenditures were.
Gotcha.
This is what was the budgeted amount.
Okay.
So generally, when we budget something, you know, even if I look at trending history and I know, okay, I spend $4,531.92, I'm gonna likely round that up to an even number in the budget. And some of those we have, you know, we have fixed amounts. We know what, you know, for example, our spraying, from like True Green or whoever ends up getting that I mean, we know that in advance of the budget, so we can plug that number in.
And I guess just for like public knowledge, you know, say snow removal, if one year it's more or less than you anticipate, if you need more money, what budget does that come from? Or if you have a surplus, where does it go?
General fund. So parks, anything parks, cemetery, anything that we're talking about are up streets or general fund. Then we have enterprise funds, which are water, sewer, wastewater. What else do I got? Those are the 3 enterprise funds I've got. So those are the ones that you pay a bill every month, and that goes to operate. That money that you pay on your monthly bill goes into a fund, the enterprise fund, to operate that. And so if there's a excess or deficiency, it always stays within that fund. Parks and cemetery are always general fund. So if there's an excess, it would just go back into the general fund. If there's an overage, say we needed more money, we would have to do a supplement, you know, usually, like I said, towards the end of the year, we do those and supplement any of the general fund.
I was, And with that, because I was just kind of curious, obviously inflation has been really high.
Right.
So, like, I was just curious if you.
Well, and
anticipated-
snow removal is a great example, because
How do you know?
how do you know how much is gonna snow, right?
Right.
So, yeah, so those, again, we're trying to look at a 3 or a 4 year trend and come up with the best case. Again, we don't necessarily want to be high and we don't want to be low. We want to kind of be in the middle and if we start, in Public Works, we kind of monitor on a monthly basis. So every month I know where we're at. And so we can kind of watch that as well. And maybe we will cut down on, if we're getting close on one, we'll definitely watch what we do. We might adjust our services, how we perform that particular function. Instead of running, 8 trucks, maybe we'll cut it down and see if we can get it done with 6 to try and save on fuel or to save on de-icer or whatever. That's just kind of comes with years of watching it and trying to, knowing what we can get by with and what we need to get it done. But at the end of the day, if we have snow we got to take care of it, right? Whether it's budgeted or not. At the end, ultimately the council will tell me, quit plowing. So that's kind of how we look at that. But other things we are able to, when we have certain things, maintenance things, or we have equipment, we have a budget in there to replace some of our hand equipment. At the end of the day, if we're running a little bit lean, we might cut some of that stuff back out and make do with and again, not replacing a weed eater. Maybe we'll, instead of doing it every 3 years, we'll try and get that 4th year out of it. So there are things like that we can always look at to try and again make our budget. But we've been pretty fortunate. I will knock on wood. Most often we're right at, or again, the guys do a really good job of keeping track of that. We very rarely do we have to do supplements. And we don't have a lot of excess, but again, we're trending that off of multiple years. So we've got history of years where fuel prices were high, where they were low, where we had a lot of snow, where we didn't. Parks and cemeteries, not so much cemetery. Parks, a big one is watering, because we pay our water bill just like everybody else. And in a really hot, dry year, our water bill is out of this world. I mean, you think about all the parks that we're watering and how much they do get, and that's everything from the softball fields out at Fort Meade to the soccer fields to the parks, to the community center. All of that's our parks accounts that we seasonal accounts that we turn on to. All of the ball fields, the baseball, softball, Legion. I mean, that's a huge dollar amount. So when we do have a really dry year, I mean, that really drives up the prices on that versus like this year. I don't even think we really turned the sprinklers on much before. It was into June, before we really had to. And
Do you spray for mosquitoes? You do, don't you?
we do. We've been, the last 2 weeks, we've been fogging, and then we also, the biggest thing is standing water. So we actually put little pucks, or there's a chemical you put in the standing water. The fogging is, it works and it helps, but when you fog, the fog will dissipate, and if the particular insect doesn't, that's how it takes care of them, is they have to fly through the fog. So once it's dissipated and gone, if they're flying, they have to fly through that fog in order for it to work.
I'm just curious, do you have any idea what that costs this year? It just seemed like there was a ton of them.
Well, that's the problem. We had a second hatch on the mosquitoes, because of all the late rain. Like right now, they're really, really bad. In the last 2 weeks, we've been out and again, we got to be careful when there's a right time and a wrong time to spray. And typically when we're spraying for mosquitoes, it's in the evening, the dusk hours, or very early in the morning. Because any insect that flies through it will basically, it makes their wings wet and and it destroys them that way. But, you know, so we got to be cognizant of the people like with bees, honeybee. I mean, we're not trying to kill them, so we got to be, you know, they're in their hive at certain times. So again, during the middle of the day, no, we don't fog, we don't spray. So we have to look at either bringing people in early or keeping them late. And then it's a balancing act of, okay, are we going to do it with overtime, or do we miss that person throughout the course of the day and they're not able to mow and weed eat or do repairs on this because we're doing the fogging and quite honestly, we are short on people who are licensed to be able to apply that pesticide. We've had some turnover in the parks and the people that we've had that usually do that have moved on into other divisions within the city. And so we don't have that resource. So we certainly got to build that back up. But yeah, we do spray when we're able to. We've been fortunate, just about every year we get a grant. This year we got our mosquito grant. We used it. The aerator down in the Lions Club pond went bad, and so we were able to use that grant to replace that. That was about $5,000 to put that aerator in there. But when we don't have it, Lions Club pond becomes a mosquito nest because there's no moving water. So that's why we added that aeration to it, because by simply doing that, the mosquitoes can't hatch there because it creates enough movement in the water.
That's cool that the grant would be covered by that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
recognize that.
So other things that we've done in the past with that grant, we are able to buy the pesticides. We have 2 fogging machines that you can either put them in the back of an ATV or in the back of a truck. Both of those have been bought in different years by that grant. But again, they're you know, when we fog, it puts out a fog that's, I don't know, 20 feet wide. I mean, it's not a huge, so, you know, I'm not getting your backyard when you're sitting on your deck. I'm sorry, but, you know, we'll try again at the dusk. We're going underneath of the street. I mean, the place that attracts the bugs, right?
Yeah.
So, we've spent a lot of time in the parks, down by the football field, the soccer fields, things like that. But yeah, we're not able to cover every single inch of Sturgis by any means.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this year we've had so much rain, I don't know.
Yeah, it
How
was,
would you-
it was normally this time of the year, we don't see a lot of mosquitoes, but they are really, really bad right now. And in weird places.
Yeah.
I was down on Lozelle Street the other morning and it was just like, oh my God, you know, in Lozelle Street. So,
Yeah.
yeah, any rate, that's kind of where we're at. I don't see any, shortcomings in the cemetery budget either. So I feel pretty comfortable where we're sitting at right now. I don't anticipate seeing any significant changes coming from first reading to second reading. I think these are fairly well locked in, but certainly the council has the prerogative to change those should they see fit to do that. Any other questions, budget questions? All righty. Next up, a quick Adventure Park update. So as I think everybody knows, we had the council had a work session at the last council meeting on the Adventure Park with the developers and trying to come up with a solution and a way to get what they feel is adequate in the park amenities and still meet a budget that's maintainable. Overall, the goal of the council, I think, is to, or always has been, to try and make it where we would not have to raise taxes to do so. Unfortunately, the costs, like anything else, costs continue to go up and up and up and up almost daily. So it is a juggle back and forth to try and come up with a solution, but certainly they are not taking a back seat, and we continue to move forward to come up with what all of the avenues are, whether they're grants, whether they're bonds, whether what all they're looking at all the different options and scenarios for funding to try and get the best bang for the buck. So they haven't decided on anything yet, but that's what they're working on.
I will say, I do find it a little interesting that we're the park board and we're not included in this. I think it would be great if the park board would be involved, especially since the plans keep changing, and I feel like the city park board should be informed or included in these conversations. I mean, we were involved in the trolley swing, and so I'm just a little surprised that the city park board isn't involved in any of this.
Moving along with Bear Butte Cemetery Project. We have been approached, and it's been in the works for a while now, about coming up with it seems the trend anymore is not to do full burials, but we're seeing more and more cremains. And not only that, quite honestly, funeral expenses are very, very high. And so we're seeing more and more people wanting to have a place where they're able to place their loved ones. I mean, I'd be honest, I've seen a video of this during the rally, and they were going in the gardens downtown. But so there's a trend anymore. We're seeing it to create these what they call scatter gardens, and what you do is you would pay a nominal fee to get your name. I mean, because you ultimately want to have a place where your next of kin, your 2 or 3 generations down the road can be like, hey, great grandmother is here, we can go pay our respects. And so we would create a nominal fee and have a place where the family can go and scatter the remains. The only thing that is covered under state statute is if it's a full burial, but there are no laws or very limited laws governing the scattering of remains once they've been cremated. You don't have to have a funeral director. There's a lot of different things. So this is just a trend that we're looking into. I think that we'll be talking more and more about this. This will certainly take a revision to our ordinances, our cemetery ordinance. And I guess I was going to read, I pulled this off, and this kind of gives a really good idea of what we're talking about. Cremation is becoming an increasingly common end-of-life choice, thanks to a breadth of factors from increased religious acceptance to burial space consideration. The practice has nearly doubled in popularity over the past 15 years. As more people have chosen cremation, a variety of options for handling the ashes have increased in popularity to accompany the practice. One of these options is a scatter garden. Scatter gardens are designated places where the family and friends of the deceased can scatter the ashes of their loved one. These gardens are often beautiful spots. They're picturesque, peaceful areas tended to be by a cemetery designated to offer a beautiful final resting place for those ashes who are spread there. So one of the things that we've been looking at is creating that space. And we're looking at, actually, we're looking at coming up with a trail that would lead off of this upper portion and come out here. And there's actually an outlook here where it looks right into the valley with Bear Butte in it. I mean, it's a very peaceful, kind of a tranquil spot. We've done some initial investigation, and I've had the guys out there, and we've kind of weed-eated, where a path would end up being, and how we could take advantage of the natural landscape, such as these big boulders and things. And like I said, it leads you through the woods and kind of then into an opening. I would liken it to about the size of a golf green, and it's got a really picturesque, peaceful place.
Where's this at?
At the Bear Butte Cemetery.
It's right below, or
Is that, that's on
top?
a trail right now, isn't it? Or I swear I recognize it.
No. We just did this here in the last 2 weeks.
is it right below the top part, and then that tree area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, there's kind of a flat there. And so what we would end up doing, we want to if we proceed with this, again, we're in the initial stages of it. This is something that we would probably look at, like maybe similar to the trail out at Fort Meade, kind of a crushed limestone trail that leads out there. Probably, have some benches out there where you could sit down, reflect. But and probably somewhere up near closer to the parking lot is where we would anticipate maybe some kind of a directory of who's there. So it's just something that we're looking at, something that we've been talking about for a while, and I think that you'll see some movement on it. Like I said, it will take some revisions to our current ordinances to be able to allow that, but there's no state laws that would prohibit it either.
I think I've seen something kind of similar at other places, but a lot of times they'll have a limestone wall or whatever, you write your name in it, or, have it engraved or whatnot.
We would probably, just again, the whole idea or the concept is to have a final resting place that's affordable, and I don't know what it would, of course you couldn't take a big limestone and take it in every year and be like, okay, so I don't know how they would engrave them once it's on but we would have some kind of a nice directory that where they're able to, like I said, go see who is there, because that ultimately that's one of the things we're trying to do is have a place where we can have a record of who's there, so that, like I said, future generations, future family can go and know that their loved ones, that's where they're at. So I think it's a really good deal, really unique deal, and something that, again, it will help span the life cycle of our cemetery. That's just one more way where we can increase, and we've got that property there. We won't ever, given the terrain, it would never be turned into, full burial sites because of the rock and the trees and the steepness. So this is just another great alternative
And
that
the
we can offer.
directory thing, I think, would be nice. Maybe the churches could all work together, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we'd do something nice, some kind of a really nice, whether it's a timbered or whatever. You'll probably be seeing that in the coming meetings. We'll as we get a little bit further down, we'll be bringing, hey, do you like option A, B, C type deal? So, good project. Next up on my list is just a Forest Service project update. So we currently work. We have ongoing work memorandums with the Sturgis Trail System, the Black Hills Trails, National Forest Service. One of the things that has come to light over the last 6 months or so is a project that's called the Chimera Fuel Reductions Project. This is both commercial and a non-commercial. When we talk about commercial, we're talking about the sale of lumber, right? The non-commercial aspect of it is generally vegetation or fuels reduction. The Chimera project included just about all of the area, that borders up from Sturgis, goes on in over to Boulder Canyon, up into Lawrence County. It's a very, very big project that there's going to be a lot of smaller projects that spur out of that. The most recent one is a part of it that was called identified as the Topaz, which is this area highlighted in yellow. You can see that we have a number of our trail system that runs through that. So what happens when they go into an active logging project, those trails would be shut down for a period of time, not able to be used because of the inherent safety factor. So when they have a ongoing logging project, they don't want people in there hiking, biking, doing whatever because of all the equipment. But when you look at collectively our trail system and specifically Sturgis, that's almost half of it that's impacted. So we've been working with them on a regular basis to try and develop strategies where maybe we can shut down part of it at a time and leave part open and then flip-flop. A lot of times too, they've been very receptive to how these projects are generally put out. Generally speaking, a project is put out a contract, and it might start December 31st, and they have 5 years to complete it. And they're able to then dictate based on the lumber prices. They may not work on it for 3 years and then go into it. So we've been talking with the Forest Service and saying, hey, especially in these areas, once we start that process, let's make sure that we continue to do it until it's done. Let's not start it and then stop it, and 3 years later start back up, to try and limit that impact. They've been very receptive to that. We're one of the few communities, of course, with our watershed property, that we actually own property within we're surrounded on 4 sides by the Forest Service. So we've got a really good working relationship with them, and we continue to kind of move forward on this. But again, just something we wanted you guys all to be aware of, because at some point in the future, this is going to have an impact on our recreational trails.
Which is really hard considering that Spearfish is doing a huge expansion on their bike stuff.
We're still doing quite a bit of expansion, and again, at the end of the day, we don't necessarily see these projects as detrimental, because in a lot of instances our trails will end up being improved through, number one, through opening up that canopy and not having as much vegetation. Of course, the trails will get somewhat obliterated during the operation, but they also have that in their contract to restore those. So sometimes our trails will end up being in a better state than when they started. The probably the downside of it is the ability to use them for a certain period of time. But certainly some of the trailheads and things like that, and that's kind of next on the list. But there'll be significant improvements made through these operations. So we continue, and this is kind of separate from, we have an ongoing memorandum of understanding and agreement with them on, and there's a process in place in getting more trails, and Black Hills Trails continues to do that, and they're doing the same work in Spearfish. So I think it's unfair to say, well, Spearfish is doing this, Sturgis isn't. Our trails continue to grow each and every year. I mean, we've got the Bob Davis Trail that was added this year. There's a lot of things, a lot of connectors and loops that are being considered and added all the time.
And Sam and Kevin do an excellent job
So,
with Black Hills Trails.
any questions on this particular? Next up is, we were awarded a RTP grant. We still have not received that yet. It is in the process. One of the things that this is designated for is the recreational trails, program funding is the RTP. This specific grant was made to do improvements at the trailhead, the one at the top of Vinacher Canyon, right before you go down by the one that accesses the dams. That is what this was originally designated for. Again, because of the Chimera project, they're going to end up using that as a landing, so they're going to make some improvements and increase the size. And at the end of the day, so we've now have started shifting and looking at using this at the Veteran Peak trailhead to make some improvements there. So again, at the end of the day, because of that project, we're going to end up with 2 trailheads that have significant improvements made, rather than one that we originally had set out to do. So again, and all that's just cooperating, the different organizations, whether it's the city, the Black Hills Trails, the Forest Service. We work with the BLM, all these different, everybody comes in it from a different aspect, and when we can pull together to get a project done, I think it's certainly a win for the community of Sturgis, and the community in the Black Hills as a whole. So very fortunate that we're able to do those things. Any questions on RTP grants or any information on those?
Does all of that money have to be used, do you anticipate that one trailhead would take up that whole grant, or how does that work?
Yeah, we would. I mean, you know, when we're talking, again, we're talking about making the trailheads bigger, added signing and kiosks, gravel, you know, so yeah, that's not $30,000 is not, I mean, that's not a lot of gravel, to be honest with you. You know, you're talking probably, you know, maybe $300 a load. And so one of the other things, you know, that we look at when we put these projects together, I reached out to the National Guard and said, hey, you know, could we do a project with you guys where maybe you guys haul it and we'll spread it out, and you know, so we're constantly looking at ways to expand and stretch that dollar as much as we can. You know, we'd like to have unlimited funds to do stuff, but when we do have those constraints, we try and maximize what we're doing. And you know, like Allison said, we've got some great team members in Sam and Kevin, and they certainly know what needs to be done and how to do it when it comes to building trails. So we rely on their expertise to kind of help guide us in doing those things as well. Last thing I have, and I don't have a slide on it, I just wanted to give you an update on our trails. You know, currently we have 3 trail projects in various states of everything from construction to planning to application. So the first one I would talk about is our Vanacker Canyon bike path, which is the one that connects from Otter Road and then goes down Vanacker and hooks into the trail system down there and the trailhead. We're just finishing up with that. That's a DOT. All of these are what they call TA grant bike path projects, which are transportation alternative projects, which means that they're looking at a way to do these that are alternative modes of transportation other than vehicular. So we're looking at walking paths, we're looking at bike paths, we're looking at, you know, sometimes they're tied into safe routes to school. But ideally their connectivity. So we've been fortunate. Sturgis has had a long history of being able to successfully obtain these grants. The Vanacker one is just getting ready to be completed, finished and closed out. That's a great, I mean, that was a piece that we really missed, and for a number of years, I mean, if you were ever in that south area, you saw kids and parents and adults and senior, everybody walking in the road because there's no sidewalks, there's no bike path, there was no connectivity. So we've kind of closed that loop and done that where it now connects to our existing bike path and then goes down and then connects into the trails and into the Forest Service. The second one that we have that we're just getting ready to put out to bid this fall is the one, I call it I don't know, that has a name. It's the Highway 14A bike path, which is going to be on the south side of Highway 14A. As you're aware, we have the bike path on the north side, but where we struggle with, especially with the trailer park and all that on the west end, those kids don't have a safe way to get across Highway 14A. So we were successful in getting that grant. The engineering is just getting completed now, and it will be a project for next spring that will connect that all the way from the trailer park all the way down to the existing bike path by Black Hills Gold on that corner Short Track Road. And so it will give them a safe avenue to be able to get on that and then ultimately go to the school, to go, you know, further downtown, whatever. So again, another great project. Those grants are typically run, the maximum amount that you're able to put in for is $600,000. We've always put in for that and received that. Not that the projects are sometimes exceed that, but that's what we're eligible for on the grant. And so if there is a gap in that, then we have to make that up through our capital improvement plan to pay that additional money. But again, another great project that's duly needed. I think that some of you might have been aware, and I think Allison, you were even at the council meeting when the young lady came about the school buses and the kids have it. So, you know, this would help solve that. So great project. The other one that we're just putting in, we just got the approval to put in for the, so the, kind of how these work is you identify a project and then you meet with a team from the DOT, from all these different aspects of the DOT, and they look at your project and see if it's a qualified project. They give you the green light to put in for the application. We've done that on what we call the Moose Drive bike path, which will connect from the intersection of Dolan Creek and Moose Drive and go up the hill and kind of through Elk Road and down and connect with the bike path down just on the other side of the Dead Man Channel. It will connect in there. So again, we're adding a piece where right now, that's another area where we see kids walking in the street because there's no sidewalks on the other side of the road. So a great need for that. We would anticipate that project probably going to construction in 2025. So we're just now putting in the grant. We should, if we're able to get the grant, then we'll move forward with the engineering and then put it out to bid and so forth. So right now, kind of timing wise, it's looking at 2025, maybe end, depending on weather, 2024, but certainly 2025. And then lastly, we've been working as part of the Dolan Creek assisted living project. We've added that bike path there on the south side of Dolan Creek, and then it turns and goes onto Hurley Drive to the south. And ultimately, the plans were that would end up going and connecting through the Marcotte property. But for now, we're ending it. The connection to it will end in Palisades subdivision. So again, another needed project. That one has a little bit more with it because we're doing some stormwater, some curb and gutter, some resurfacing, but certainly will be nice to have that widened bike path. I believe just about all of those are 8-foot paths. The Moose might even be a 10-foot. So again, good projects. Again, we count those as part of our bike path trail system. Those will be city maintained. We'll do all the snow removal on it, everything, all the maintenance.
What's the width for the 80? Is it for the wheelchair? What's the width for it to be an ADA? Is it 6 feet?
4 feet.
4 feet wide?
Yeah, a normal sidewalk. The ADA is not so much width as it is inclines and slopes and things of that nature. You can go so far, and then you have to have a pad where you have to be able to turn and go whatever direction you want to go.
Yeah, I just can't remember when Kevin and I were talking about, they really liked the wider pass and what you're using, but he had some rationale between how they dictate that and the definition of it.
So that's all I have for my report. Anybody have any other further questions?
John, all the projects that you mentioned for the bike path, are you guesstimating about 2025 when they'll all get started, or?
No, so like I said, the Vanacker one is just finishing up. The Dolan Creek one is just finishing up. The Highway 14A should be in construction next spring, 2024. The Moose Drive one will be a 2025 project because we're doing that in conjunction with some road work on Moose Drive as well. So we've got some new pavement, curb and gutter, some storm drainage, and in the bike path. Hopefully, we look again. That's one of the things that we do is if we have a street project, we try and coordinate that with other work. Hopefully, our hopes would be we would get the same contractor to bid them both and give a better price because he's got more work in that location. Generally, that's how it works. Doesn't always work that way, but that's kind of what we look at. If we can put those projects together, we usually see a better bang for the buck on when we bid them.
Speaking of the curb, I know one time we met, we were talking about closing that road on the Lions Club Park and then opening up the backside. Did we get a timeline on that, or?
So that's part of the East Main and East Sherman project, and that right now is currently scheduled for the first phase to begin in 2025. And that'll be that project, because of how much it covers, basically everything from Nellie all the way to the cemetery, it's gotta be phased, I mean, there's just no way to do it all at one time, so that will span over, we've got it phased in a manner where we would have a spring phase, and then, of course, we gotta shut down, and then we'd have a fall phase, and then we would go into the second year with a phase. And that's a total reconstruction. I mean, that's water, sewer, storm sewer, curb and gutter, pavement. It's taking those dips out.
Is that same, with the soccer, is that tied to that same time or?
So
not?
that, the approach to the parking lot is, because we couldn't find any, here, we had anticipated putting that approach into that east parking lot. We couldn't get anybody to bid that project because it was so small. So we did add that into this bigger project, so
Line steel.
it will happen, all of that will happen as one project. And generally speaking, when we do projects like that, we start on the lower end and go up because we're dealing with storm. We can't really start at the top and collect stormwater and have nowhere for it to go, so we start on the bottom and work our way up.
So you're like soccer and then go up, is that what you're talking?
Yeah, I mean, that's traditionally how things are phased because your stormwater, you have to have a place for it to go, and so you build as you go up, so you're collecting it, it's active as you go, versus starting up on the top and collecting it, you have nowhere for it to go to,
Gotcha.
so, yeah,
That'll be nice when that's changed.
that will be. You'll be happy, won't you? Any other questions? Any old business? Any new business? We have a motion to adjourn?
Karen, do you have anything? Are you sure? Karen has something to say.
I'm just speaking for, I used to play pickleball and I'm gonna get back to it, but is there any chance of fixing the pickleball courts? So there aren't.
Fixing it,
Or resurfacing, because the cracks are dangerous.
sure.
People don't wanna play on them. They weren't, they're the wrong direction to begin with,
Right.
but, I just am curious, is there any way, there's one court that's good, the other two have big cracks. So,
Right now, I mean, I can tell you that they're not programmed anywhere. When we built the Sixth Street Park, we did resurface them. That's when we created the pickleball courts. We had to keep, again, some parameter. We had to keep some tennis. We had to do some pickleball. So that's just, again, those are old tennis courts that were turned into pickleball. So I know they're not perfect. We can certainly put that down and put it into a future project. I don't disagree with you. I know that they play pickleball in the community center. I know we striped the one up in Vernon Heights, that we striped that as a pickleball court.
What's it, what's it resurfaced with?
So that is the same thing that, it's basically an asphalt. I mean, it's the same thing that the tennis courts were. And so when we did have those, I guess, let me go back, we didn't necessarily resurface them, but we hired the guy that actually was the same company that originally put them in, and he came in and it's kind of like a street when we go out and we crack seal a street. I mean, they basically do the same thing, and then they put a very thin top layer of it. Same thing happens with streets. If there's a crack there and I put an overlay on it, generally within a year or two, that crack, they call it reflective, comes right back through in the exact same spot. Probably the only way to completely mitigate them and do away with them is to completely redo the court, and probably at that point in time makes sense to make it concrete and not asphalt. But again, like I said, we don't have that as a project, not to say it can't be, and I'll certainly put it on my list of things, but there's probably some maintenance we can do to make it better.
yeah, I think, cause Norm Graham is the one that's talking to me, and he said even if you could put the glue in, he said, that would be doable for
Sure.
right now, just to make it a little safer.
Sure.
Because I don't care if the line's not there, but just to have the cracks filled.
Yeah, and we can certainly do that. I mean, that's just getting some hot mix, and we can do that.
How much does it cost? How much does it cost, do you think, to resurface one of those?
Oh,
On the patch
I
seal
wouldn't
thingy?
even have a guess right now. You know, concrete and asphalt are not too far apart right now. So,
Rick, the utilization of the tennis courts, do you have any track record of how many people actually use
you
the
know,
tennis court? Have you ever seen anybody on the?
Yeah, I do, and it more, you know, funny. The minute I say something and I start watching, I would have swore to God 6 months ago nobody ever uses the frisbee, the disc frisbee. When I start looking, there are people down there all the time. But yeah, so we, you know, when we built the 6th Street Park, that was one of the things. We're like, geez, you know, they discontinued tennis in the school. Is there anybody that even does it? Well, you know, and maybe it was because they were in such bad shape, maybe people weren't using them. But when we did resurface them, all of a sudden, we had people there playing tennis. We have a number of people that play pickleball. That's gaining popularity. So it's, you know, I guess it's kind of finding that compromise of what works and what doesn't. But
Do they share the same, like pickleball and tennis, or they?
they're different courts, but in that same fenced area.
Complex.
So basically, if you remember years ago, we had three tennis courts.
Right.
And so we still have the one that's tennis and pickleball, and then the other one we turned into a basketball court. We concreted that, and maybe that's something we could look at doing too, is striping that for pickleball.
Because that's pretty smooth. I
Oh,
mean,
it's
we were on it
it's
this summer.
absolutely smooth.
Yeah,
And-
and
and-
everyone has portable nets now too, so.
And I don't know that, you know, I generally see people using the basketball court is in the more of the later afternoon and evenings, when pickleball is generally first thing in the morning. You know, and then we could face it that, maybe that's a compromise, maybe that's something we can look at doing. But so we did that court, and then on the very end one, we relocated the sand volleyball and the BMX, the bike, ramp or whatever that's called. So, you know, that's what we ended up with, and trying to get the most impact in the same amount of space. And you know, I guess, you know, no matter who it is, the BMX people would say, we don't have enough space. Volleyball is gonna say, we don't have enough space, the basket. But that's what it boils down to, is just trying to come up with a best fit solution. And
The basketball idea might be good though, huh? Because I mean, a lot of basketball probably is like kids, you know,
Yeah.
high schoolers, and
that's
and
what
then-
we typically see. But
then the
yeah, maybe,
pickleball
I mean,
players are still
we'll look at
teenagers
it, maybe
too,
that's a good alternative. And then again, in the morning, you could face it west instead of east, so the sun wouldn't be, right,
Morning and night, you're either
Right.
looking in the sun or.
right.
So that was just a bad deal. But that's why Norm said Cody had mentioned that building. So he evidently mentioned it at some point.
I guess I mean, if we're gonna use that building, you know, we have it inside right now in the racquetball courts, they play pickleball, and in the gym, I mean,
is that,
what I guess what I hear is most of the people only wanna play indoors in the wintertime, not in the, they don't want to in the, yeah, so. But again, not you know, not to say it can't happen, it just, I don't know with the batting cage nets how, I mean, I don't know how that would work.
I don't
It's-
either.
if there's
He
even
just said
space for
if
it?
Cody was here to ask him, because he evidently mentioned it to them at one point. That's out of town, they can contact him. But, yeah, I think the basketball court might be an option, but, yeah, I think it's really gaining. There's
Right.
a lot of, you have to just wait in line to play again.
You know, the problem is all of the, you know, it's, all of these, man, they're so expensive to build. I mean, so we're trying to rehab or, you know, make do with what we have. I mean, and even at that, it's a huge cost to do some of that. But yeah, I wish we had a pot of gold. We could,
you know that spot, so Lions Club Park, and then there's like that gap where it used to be the old ice rink, you know? I know that there was some talk, maybe soccer would maybe use that or whatever, but like, if they ever do build an expansion of pickleball or whatever, I mean, how much space does it need?
Pickleball?
Yeah,
It depends if you do a
Fit in
half a
there.
court or a full court. I mean, again, so, you know, the one up in Vernon Heights, we were able to stripe that. I mean, it's not overly big, but it works. You know, where the old ice rink is a part of, the East Main and East Sherman. I mean, that will be utilized for stormwater retention. So I don't know if it's, I mean,
feasible.
and again, you know, to build a new pickleball facility, I can get you the numbers because Rapid City just built it, and I'm sure it's, huh?
Bell just put into,
How much did it cost?
know, it's just
Yeah.
a picture saying.
I mean, I bet it would shock you how much.
I do think though, like putting that kind of information out to the public, I think is okay though, because then people realize how much it costs. Or like with the ball field and the lights and people, you know, even if they're very involved in a sport, still sometimes get a little shock value.
Sure.
And just a little bit of realization. And, you know, hey, if they really want a pickleball or whatever we want, then we need to raise money, right?
Sure. But no, thanks for bringing that. I mean, I had not heard that I don't play pickleball, so I don't go down to the pickleball courts probably as often as I should. But I'm sure we can probably make them better than where they're at now.
My kid just brought home pickleball 2 days ago. I was like, what is this?
It is.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I was just like, okay, this is like tennis? This is, and then
Kind
my
of a
mom said,
version of tennis.
yeah, my mom, yeah. My mom said, well, it's pickleball, and I was like, okay, well, this is what I've been hearing about, so. Looked like tennis to me. All right,
That's all I have. Is there a motion to adjourn, or is there any other matters?
Motion to adjourn.
Well, that's good. Keep it right at an hour.